This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Agronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 143. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
Hi.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hey there.
So this feels a little weird because it's been several weeks since we've recorded an actual normal show. Have we recorded one since the Games of the Year shows?
Nope.
Okay. No. So yeah, we've done a lot of stuff. Ash and I have been to Pax South. We've played a lot of games in that time. So yeah, we're back. Let's do a normal show. So Pax South this year, I feel like I had more fun than I've had in a lot of the other 2 years.
Because you weren't having to do stuff for other people?
Yes, I wasn't having to do press appointment. And that's because I don't know, it was always weird because I felt like I was either waiting for a press appointment or watching my watching my clock to see what I could actually get in before the next one. So it felt like that was kind of dictating my fun. And even when I was out on the floor, I felt like I was mostly looking for things that specific publication would be interested in hearing about instead of just looking for things that, I thought were interesting.
Yeah.
Also, having 16 people at one show was a little bit madness.
That was a little crazy last year, yeah.
It was impossible to try and hang out with everyone. And it felt like we ended up just circling like sharks most of the time, trying to figure out what we were going to do.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure there were people there last year that I never actually saw.
Probably. As far as at the show, it was me and Ash and Ray and her brother, and I never actually saw her brother, and Paragon, and then Exhale and Malvis, and we really didn't get to spend a lot of time with them. They were
once.
Yeah, I ran into him twice. Exhale brought his kid on the show floor, and that was the most chill baby I have ever seen.
It's Baby Ocelot.
Baby Ocelot?
Yes.
Because Exhale was in his snake cosplay again, and his son, who was quite young, was
tiny.
Baby Ocelot.
Tiny babby.
I'm trying to remember. He'll be a year old in a few months.
Yeah. He did that early in the morning, and by the time he actually found me, he was back out of costume again, and so was baby. And he briefly hung out with me while I was waiting in the Dauntless line, which was an hour and a half long. So, okay, you actually got to play the Switch, Ash, didn't you?
No. You kidding?
Okay. Well, no, you were there on Sunday, so I didn't know if it got less madness. So, I have to explain, the Switch line. It was, doubled up inside of the booth, and then it snaked outside of the booth, and along the back wall, down 2 or 3 other booths worth of length.
Hey, Dan, remember what the ESO line looked like at East?
Oh, yeah.
It looked a lot like that.
Yikes.
Yeah, it was madness. And, apparently there were multiple lines that if you didn't necessarily care about playing Legend of Zelda, you could play one of the other things. But, I never could find the start of those lines. And I figured, no, somebody will have it that I can play with it, and it was not worth it. Because, if you were going to go play Zelda, you were pretty much only waiting in that line and doing nothing else that day.
It wasn't quite that long, but yeah, this was a several-hour line. It wasn't the only game to generate very, very long lines, though.
What else?
Dauntless and Rime both had massive lines. How long was the line for Rime, Ash?
Line for Rime was a little over an hour long.
It was a long demo, though, wasn't it?
It was a fairly long demo. It was, I guess we should say what these games actually are. Rime is a third-person puzzle game where you are a little kid. You are running around trying to... I don't know what exactly. The demo mostly solved puzzles.
Rime game for PS4?
That's that one. It's an art style very reminiscent of something that we played last year. For the demo, though, mostly you could, as a kid, you could jump and you could shout. So the jumping involved a little bit of platforming, climbing around on things, so on and so forth.
What does shouting
Your shout activated some devices around you. If you were close enough to certain things and you shouted, then you would turn these things on. So some of the puzzles in the demo involve moving things so that you could, be in range of multiple things at once. Also finding like this amplifier that if you shouted near it, it would then echo you and could set off things in a larger radius. One of the first things you see is a sort of empty fountain where around it in thirds are 3 things that you can activate, but you can't activate them all at once. You can't even come anywhere close. You can gradually make your way up a tower, and there's a giant one of these things at the top of the tower. If you shout near that, it will activate all the things around that fountain, and then also other things for a good ways out. I'm a little curious to see what the puzzle design ends up being beyond simply that mechanic. There's a hint of something more near the end of the demo where you could change the time of day. Looks like it'll be real interesting.
Is the game whose art style you say it is very close to
It looks
The
like
Witness? It actually, to me, looks more like The Journey, but I can see why you would say Witness.
All those games have sort of a flat, clean-looking art style in common.
Yes. With a name like Rime, is this just some interesting retelling of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner?
I highly doubt it.
Okay.
It involves a fox,
Oh.
which actually gave me a plushie out for playing the demo. So
Check out this Sweet Fox.
hopefully more interesting than that one.
Cool. No, this looks like a game that I would be interested in. I mean, puzzle
Just like it.
platformers. Puzzle platformers are sort of my jam.
So another one of the games that was massively long was Dauntless, and you ended up playing that on Sunday, right, Ash?
I did twice even, actually.
So
Second
it
time
is.
I didn't have to wait nearly as long.
It is basically Windows Monster Hunter, or a PC Monster Hunter game. And I found out I am really bad at Monster Hunter games, so I did not last terribly long. I was the lady with the big hammer that allowed you to fire and shoot yourself at the target. And in theory, it should have been super mobile, and I should have probably stuck and got away, and stuck and got away. But no, I tried to tank it.
Yeah, Monster Hunter is not a game that allows you... Well, actually, that's not true. Actual Monster Hunter does allow you to do this, but only if you're using the lance, basically, or the charge blade. One of the weapons with a giant shield option. Even then, you have to block basically everything. This game did not offer a shield option, assuming they will. Well, we'll see what they will offer eventually.
I don't know how customizable it's going to be, because it seems like every character is based around a specific weapon. So I don't know if you're going to get to...
Taking that basically directly from Monster Hunter, and that your weapon determines your entire combat style. There probably aren't characters. I mean, preset characters.
So they've just made presets for the demos?
Presets for the demo.
Okay. I could get behind that a lot more than, if I play this character, I will always do this one thing. And it's supposedly open world, but the demo was basically little 4v monster vignette areas.
I expect them to take a little more from Monster Hunter, so I don't expect anything more than that, actually.
Okay.
That does make it more open than Monster Hunter, because Monster Hunter divides its combat arenas into separate areas, whereas Dauntless wants to just have this giant island where you're fighting a monster.
Yeah.
But you're fighting a single monster on a giant island, as opposed to having a big island with a bunch of monsters on it.
For now, I guess.
Yeah, the demo was just that. It was a demo. It was a walled combat arena, basically. I'm not walled literally, but you're on an island and you can't get out of it, and there is a monster roaming around. Now everybody go attack the monster. So I mean, it's probably really early in the process.
Yeah, I'm watching some footage from what it looks like the PAX build. It looks like I don't know how Monster Hunter's combat feels. It looks like this is still a little sluggish.
Monster Hunter is, the word I'm going to use is deliberate, but yes, sluggish. You have to, less so in Dauntless, but more in Monster Hunter, you have to commit to basically all of your actions. You start a swing, you can't stop it, you can't dodge usually until you're done. Most weapons have little in the way of combos, or if there is a combo, you don't use it very often. Mostly you're trying to hit and run unless you get a giant opening. Monster uses an attack that leaves it exposed, or you manage to knock it over or something.
So yeah, I haven't played Monster Hunter, but I've been playing a lot of Souls games, and I wonder how you would compare
I feel like
those...
you should try Monster Hunter at some point.
Probably. But I wonder how you would compare the combat styles of those two different games.
It's a little hard. They both have that sense of requiring you to commit to your actions, but while Souls games basically always have that roll dodge that is quite useful.
Mm-hmm.
Monster Hunter, in most cases, that roll dodge is not nearly as useful. Dauntless had an amazing one, however.
Yeah, that's what I'm watching this Dauntless footage, and I'm like, yeah, there's a roll dodge. This seems pretty sweet.
Or
Yeah,
the hammer
Monster
could
Hunter.
just, rocket away with the hammer.
I didn't find you could rocket backwards. You could only rocket forwards,
Oh.
as far as I could tell. I played that character second after that shotgun thing was strictly an offensive tool.
Well, that's unfortunate, because it looked like it would be amazing. Get the hell away.
Everything seems a lot slower than a Souls games, though, including
Yes.
the fact that, like, this thing seems to be full of HP.
Yeah,
It
and
is the one thing
I
that
get-
four people
yeah.
are fighting.
But, like, there is not a boss in a Souls game that has this much HP.
No.
some of it was kind of brutal too, because like I ended up getting trapped in. I did the frost fight, which is like the ground based critter that does frost attacks. And there was this thing that they did where they put down this walled corridor of ice, and you had to literally bust your way out to keep from getting killed. And I didn't figure that out in time, and the monster came rolling down the middle and wrecked me. So like the monsters are also putting down physical obstacles while you're doing the fight, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, that one was at least
like it created ice structures,
which made it
rolled into or through them just to get at you, which was really annoying.
Well, and it would do like ice spike attacks, which would get in the way, and you had to move around or knock down. It was cool, but I feel like I want to see what it looks like more before I really decide I'm going to be interested in it.
Makes sense.
Because at least with Monster Hunter, there's like a lot of other things that you can do, as well as just go after big monsters.
At first, but really the game's all about going after big monsters.
It's the name.
Yeah.
One of the things about Monster Hunter is that after you start by going after small monsters, then slightly larger monsters, then slightly larger monsters, then multiple slightly larger monsters, then gigantic things. And I'm wondering if this is going to be similar, or if it's just going to be at the slightly larger monster stage.
I think they've only showed off like 3 different monsters at this point. This is kind of hard to gauge.
They definitely have a ways to go there.
Yeah, I was going to say, all of these monsters seem pretty big.
Although they did have one marked as harder than the other, and unfortunately, like, my team went after the harder of the two.
I did it twice, and both times the team went after the harder of the two, and
didn't
beat it either time.
Yeah, so that was the annoying mechanic, is that basically there was a limited number of times that a team member could go down, and I didn't know there was a heal, and that was part of it.
I did write about this in my blog a little while ago.
Yeah.
It was not a good thing to keep in a show floor demo, but they have a limited number of downs before, your entire team gets kicked out.
So if one member of your team is really terrible at this game, you don't last very long.
Yeah, I was that member of the team.
First one was maybe a minute long.
Is there a way to, tell how hurt the enemy is?
So there were what I can only guess were phase transitions, where the mob would, temporarily change colors or something, and then, maybe pick up a new attack or start attacking slower or faster. And it seemed like those were like transition points, and we got it to like the 3rd one of those, and I think the monster is beaten at the 4th or so, from what I saw watching someone.
You were facing the ice one, right?
Yeah.
There were a few different things going on there. The primary way to tell how close you are to winning in Monster Hunter is normally by looking at the monster, seeing their actions, what they do. When you are fairly close to winning, they'll start, limping and get a little weaker visibly. But before then, they may enrage when you get them the lowest health, so on and so forth. The ice thing in this had 2 mechanics like that going on. As it attacked, it would gradually start glowing more and more. Once it was glowing completely, it would sort of go into a super ice mode, at which point it would start with that giant ice wall attack and try to kill a member of your team. But in addition to that, it also seemed to have a sort of enrage of sorts, where it would just start glowing red. My second team went down when it combined these and just straight up murdered 3 of us. I think it seemed like it was near death at that point, but they don't provide you with a health bar, so you can't exactly tell.
So, like, in its current form, it was kind of sluggish, poorly messaged combat.
What you're telling me is you could see the outline of something that could be cool.
Yeah, no, like, this could absolutely be cool if it were, balanced a little bit, maybe messaged a little better.
Sadly, I don't expect messaging a little better to be a thing that happens.
Is
Because
there
it's
crafting
taking after a
stuff
series
too?
doesn't message well.
I have no idea if there's a crafting system at all.
They said yes, but it certainly wasn't in the demo. The demo was just a demo.
Yeah.
They said yes, there's a crafting system. They have a ranged weapon in planning. They have announced dual blades as a weapon, although those weren't playable. And something else. They say they want to launch with 6 weapons. I think it'll be cool. A bunch of the arcane nonsense with Monster Hunter is things I learned over the past year, playing the most recent game and playing with somebody who has played previous Monster Hunter games a lot.
Yeah, I can't remember where I heard this from, but like the guy's explanation was you kind of play Monster Hunter for a certain amount of time until you basically can't go any further, and that's the end of that game. And then you take the knowledge you learned from that one and try the next one, and you'll probably be better at it.
That seems like a weird sales pitch. I mean, I have Generations, but I haven't really sorted out what the hell I'm doing in Generations.
Well, what weapon did you pick?
Sword and Shield.
Pick a different weapon.
Okay. What do you think I picked, Ash?
I think that's why he asked you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, it's pretty obvious which weapon I'm going to pick.
To tell you to pick a different weapon.
No.
Sword and Shield is weird. Allows you easier to use items, but it's not defensive at all, despite, having a shield. It's a fast weapon more than anything else. Try Lance.
So, there was another game that had a massive line, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I have no idea what it was.
Are you referring to Earthfall?
No, God, no. That game looked horrible.
Oh.
I
thought it might be cool, but it was certainly a little...
It has some of the worst...
polished.
Yeah, it has some of the worst character animations I've seen for a shooter. Which is pretty bad considering you're just talking about a gun. It had really jerky motion, and no, it wasn't.
Earthfall was trying to be Left 4 Dead with mutants and aliens. It just
Yeah.
didn't look great.
Yeah, no. But they had a really awesome monster in their booth. That was kind of the highlight.
That was the other long lineup that I can recall.
There was another one, but it was like, I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it was basically a walking simulator type game, but it was right next to the Switch line, so it was also, I don't know, it was part of this quagmire. Like, anytime you tried to walk near the Nintendo booth, it was impossible to move for a while. So I largely avoided anything in the direct area of the Nintendo booth. I think the game that I was most impressed with the entire show was Dice Throne. Enough that, like, the second I got home, I backed its Kickstarter. But this is a tabletop game. I don't know how best to describe it.
It's a tabletop game of dueling, basically. It's mostly a dice game.
But it feels kind of like dueling with Magic the Gathering sealed decks, sort of.
Okay.
You
So
have 5 dice. They are
Yeah.
class specific and may have different things on different faces depending on the class. You try to assemble these into something that matches something on your board, Yahtzee style. Like you roll them all and you can decide which ones to reroll up to twice. You also have a hand of cards, which can be used to influence the dice or turns or some various other things.
Or replace the abilities on your board
Oh, yes, I forgot about that as well.
with more efficient versions of the abilities on your board.
Or sometimes completely new abilities. The Paladin was weird.
Well, and like the Shadow Thief ended up getting a lot of 2-for-1s. So like you had plunked down an ability, and instead of having one ability in that slot, you now had 2 different abilities in it.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, like it was really cool. It was shockingly fast to pick up. Like I only played the Barbarian and the Shadow Thief, and the Shadow Thief is very much not me, but I still enjoyed playing it, which should say something. Like the Shadow Thief was basically
Thief is actually my kind of character.
well, the Shadow Thief is playing a completely different game than the Barbarian.
The Barbarian, as you might expect, has 7 abilities on. Everyone has like a card of 8 abilities. For the Barbarian, 6 of these are direct attacks.
Smash,
the remaining
smash,
2
smash.
are his defense, which is a self heal, and a self heal you can use while not on defense.
That sounds very straightforward.
Yes.
Ultimate, which I guess he also had an ultimate at the bottom of the sheet, is also a smashy ability.
Which is basically like roll several dice, you do that much damage.
Actually, the ultimate is just 20 damage straight up, also stun.
Yeah. And you had effects that you could apply to the other player, like, so, the Shadow Thief had a poison effect, and there were certain abilities that dropped poison, or if you got a certain roll, but also had the poison vial symbol, it applied a token of poison. And then during the upkeep, you took damage every turn if you had poison dots on you. Like Shadow Thief was all about stacking.
Shadow Thief was about the long game.
Yeah, it was the long game, and it was also about stacking combat points. I think that's what it was called, combat points. Which basically there's two gauges that you have. So you start at 50 health, or at least in the games we were playing, we started at 50 health. I guess you can start at like 30 health and have a shorter game. And then you start at 1 CP, and CP is used to spend to use cards and abilities, or in the case of the Shadow Thief, you want to cap CP as fast as possible, because all of your attacks that are like your big attacks start scaling based on how many CP you have. So like the basic attacks for the Shadow Thief were like kind of just dinking, a point here, a point there, but once they had full CP, they were dealing like 20 points a hit, or could deal 20 points a hit in a couple cases. Paladin I didn't get to see, but I don't know if you played it, Ash, or if Paragon.
Shadow Thief, while Paragon played the Paladin.
Okay.
The Paladin doesn't have a basic attack. Paladin instead has a passive in that slot. He can spend CP to reroll dice. So all of the things on his board are combo-based. Paladin has to assemble combos to do anything.
I know there was like the Moon Elf basically dealt damage while defending.
It was like a ranger. I didn't quite see how that one.
Yeah, no, I didn't get to see that one. I didn't get to see the Pyromancer, but it was like basically burn all the things while trying not to kill yourself in the process.
No. Killing yourself in the process is part of it.
Yeah.
Did get to see the Pyromancer.
Then what was the 6th?
Monk. I did not see
Monk. Yeah. But this was basically how we ended up finishing up one night. Was sitting at this table. And we almost didn't pay any attention to this game because we had played a different dice game earlier in the day.
Played
and
Demon Dice.
Yes, and now we're scarred for life.
We're probably never going to play Demon Dice again.
It absolutely was the Dragon Dice that I remember that was once put out by TSR.
We didn't play Dragon Dice. But
it's the same.
Demon Dice is a similar thing.
Yeah, it's
but
the
it's a
same.
remake of a different game by TSR.
Yeah. I guess when TSR dropped the license, the original creator picked it up and started self-publishing based on what I was able to see on the wiki.
That game isn't very good, unfortunately.
No, it was horrible. It was really bad.
So we
but
played that, and it was not good. It came to Tokyo, and I thought that was not great either.
It was okay. Like, it was fun enough, but it wasn't amazing.
So yes, after basically striking out with 2 dice games, we almost didn't touch this thing.
But, I mean, you know how when you're waiting in line in PAX, you sometimes strike up conversations with random people? I ended up doing that while waiting in the hour-and-a-half long line for Dauntless, and one of the people said, we had to go play this game because it was really fun, and I am super glad that they did. And I haven't even checked on the Kickstarter in a while, but like they were fully funded in like the first 24 hours. And
climbing. They have made all of the stretch goals they initially posted, so they posted some more.
Oh, sweet. So basically we're going to get all 6 characters in our box set.
You might say that the quality of these games is a roll of the dice.
Ba-dum-bum. Honestly, like, this is probably one of the most professional looking prototypes I've ever seen. Like, the only thing the only thing that was the dead giveaway that it was a prototype is the fact they had sticker dice instead of engraved dice. But yeah, no, like, everything looked amazing. I mean, they had really nice cards that were plastic coated. They had like really thick, well printed boards. But honestly, all of the PAX Rising tabletop games were pretty great looking. I think the other one that I really liked of that group was Wicked Apples, and enough to buy the card game.
What are Wicked Apples? So
Wicked Apples is this little, basically, memory game. It's really fast.
Way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a memory game. So the idea is that everybody has a bucket, an apple bucket, and then you get doled out a wicked apple matching that apple bucket. And the goal of the game is not to eat a wicked apple, because if you eat the wicked apple, you're out. And so everybody's dealt 3 other apples, and they take those apples and their wicked apple and place them face down in front of them. And you have to remember where your wicked apple was.
You may want to remember where some of your other things are too, in case they become important.
Yeah. And all of the apples are unique. They all do different things. Like, so there was a frozen apple that you played on another player's apple, And actually, I'm getting ahead of myself because the turn order is every round you can take an action and choose between peek or pass. And if you peek, you look at an apple in front of you to see what's underneath the card, and you can just like lift it up, and so that only you see it. Or pass, you can pass one of your apples to another player. Doesn't matter who, just anybody you want to. And then after everyone has taken that action, you have to choose an apple in front of you and eat it. And then you act out whatever that apple tells you. So like the frozen apple, you can play it on another player's apple, and they can't do peek on that apple anymore. They can only choose to eat it. Candy apple basically was a taunt that made that player eat that apple next. I don't remember some of the other ones, but a lot of them involved like
the one
swapping.
That got me in trouble is that there is also a poison apple, which is not the same as a wicked apple.
But it's still going to kill you.
Eat a poison apple, the next time someone else eats a wicked apple, you die.
Yeah, I absolutely handed the poison apple to somebody else, thinking that I was going to kill one person with the wicked apple and get another person with the poison apple. But it's like only a 35 card deck or so. But it's like a really fast, fun game. It's 5-10 minutes to play a hand. It seemed to scale fairly well with multiple people because like in one of the plays, you guys were playing like 3 at a time, and then when I finally got in, I think there were like 5 of us playing, and it seemed to work well either direction. Probably.
Yes, it's a test of your memory and your deviousness.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I did okay with my cards. I did okay with my cards, but was completely out of it when it came to trying to figure out where the cards that people handed to me are in relation to what was actually I was starting with. I think the most interesting game of the show has to be Mages of Mystralia.
I saw you guys
Definitely
talking about
weird.
that one, and it looked neat.
It does look
Like,
neat.
like it's like, I don't know, like it could have been a really cool tech demo, because when we first had it explained to us, like they were only caring about talking about their amazing spell creation system.
They were in like an arena so they could show it off.
Yeah. So basically, like, you start off with basic attacks, and then there are all these crazy mutators that you can apply to them. So, like, if you have an attack that is just like a short-range force spell, you can take it, and you can apply a movement mutator to it. And now it's a force ball of sorts. Or you can, apply a split mutator. So now it, like, splits into 3 smaller force balls. Or you can make it rotate you, so it becomes like a shield around you. Or you can change the element just by removing the core and flipping it to another element. And in the game itself, you're kind of handed these a little bit of at a time, and then you use them to solve puzzles and get through the level and unlock new areas. So it kind of has, Metroidvania in the sense of you
Structured
unlock
like a Zelda game.
Yeah.
In the demo, you could find the modifier that would let your spells explode, and then you could start using them to get through walls that were cracked. One of the things I thought was interesting about their spellcrafting system, though, is that the order in which you assemble things matters, because you have this basic orb spell that you can stick move on, so then it becomes a fireball. Or you could stick, and you also have, say, a left modifier. If you put left on the core, then it just fires off to the left. If you put left on the move, it instead curves to the left. I think there will be some interesting possibilities with that as well. One they sort of emphasized was that you can use that combination to hit switches behind walls.
Yeah, and they showed off at there was an arena that had a bunch of switches around the outside, and they used one fireball to essentially hit all of them in sequence. But it's definitely like the most in-depth spell casting system I've ever seen, and even though I don't really like finger wigglers, I found myself fascinated by it because there was so much you could do with it.
The ability system reminded me of Transistor more than anything else.
Yeah.
Oh, I do love the ability system in that game. I note that it boasts written by Ed Greenwood.
Yes.
If you consider that a plus, yes.
Interesting.
I mean, I don't.
So Elminster will be showing up to tell us what to do and then save the day at the end.
Yeah,
There is an Elminster type character in it that is kind of guiding you through it, sort of. So maybe they kept pitching it as Harry Potter meets Zelda.
Elminster is like Elminster is everyone's worst I'm obsessed with my D&D character story come to life. Like those people who talk about their D&D characters in really excited terms?
Yes.
Ed Greenwood made a living off of that.
Look,
Yep.
This is also why we have Thrall.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's the same basic, yeah.
So they actually have a webcomic for this thing.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I was reading it, and it's actually kind of good.
Like, the art style looks cool.
Yeah, you're like a little girl mage, and I got the impression that, like, this is a world where magic was once a big thing, and now it's kind of forbidden-ish.
You should read the webcomic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, like, I recognize this art style. It's Brian Clevenger.
And there's a reason.
Oh, well then.
So, game I absolutely did not intend to sit down and play, but had an extremely exuberant person trying to get people to play it, was a game that came from a game jam called Think of the Children. This game is amazing. This is my
You say so?
This is my ultimate chicken horse of this year. It's a really twisted game. Basically,
I was a little less enthusiastic about that game.
It was fun. Like, Ray and I were playing, and we were horrible parents. But the theory is that, like, your parents, babysitters, caretakers, whatever you want to say, and you have a bunch of kids in your charge, and your kids have no survival instinct. In fact, they outwardly look for things to get in trouble with. So they'll go over and pet the jellyfish, or they'll get attacked by a swarm of birds, or they'll drown in the sandbox. So you've got a timer, and you're trying to keep them all alive, and you can, like, shout at them, and they will temporarily pay attention to you and stop doing horrible things, and then immediately return to what they're doing. Or you can pick them up and, like, actually physically move them away from the bad stuff, or you can distract them by, like, setting up a piñata or, setting up a table.
Is this like a first-person game? Or...
No, it's over the top, isometric kind of view. And, like, it's a really fast-paced sort of game, and I found it hilarious. Like, the first time I was
Sort
an
of
F-.
voxely art style as well.
Yeah, I was an F- parent, and then in the later attempts, I think I got to D.
This sounds like a game I've seen. I want to say I saw Jim Sterling play, where it was a competitive game. One player was the parent, the other player was the baby. The parent is trying to baby-proof the house, while the baby is trying to kill itself.
It is not that game, but it is similar in concept to that game.
Yeah.
It's not competitive, though. It's co-op.
Okay.
Yeah, you're like, you get different scores, so, like, one of you can basically have a better score, but no, you're trying to work as a team to get all the children through the level, and at the same time, like, put out other obstacles. Like, there's a beach scene where the sunbathers catch on fire, and you have to put them out of fire.
Otherwise, your kids will walk over and catch on fire.
Yes. It's madness. I mean, it's totally madness. But it was fun. I greatly enjoyed it. But it's definitely it's a couch co-op party game type game. And then there was Tower 57, which was straight up Chaos Engine, which nobody probably remembers Chaos Engine but me.
I am not old enough to know what that is.
Yeah, I know. Chaos Engine was an Amiga shooter that was amazing. And this game, like, everything about it borrows from Chaos Engine, with a little bit of a Akari Warrior Smash TV style twin stick shooter element to it. It is gorgeous pixel art. They describe it as diesel punk, but I'm trying to think. I think that was most of the things that I thought were really interesting from Pax South. Did you have anything else, Ash?
Different versions of dodgeball. Well, a couple things, I guess.
One was really good, and one wasn't so good.
One was Lupin Ball, which was kind of sort of okay.
Yeah.
Striker's Edge, which was reminiscent of, like, Super Dodgeball, except with, like, spears. And that was pretty good.
It was really good, but man, it was kind of hard. Or at least I found it really hard. Lupin Ball was, like, way easier, but it was also, like, there was less strategy to it.
Yes.
It was just try not to
stuff.
Yeah, like,
eventually something you throw is going to hit someone else.
Yeah, because basically, like, he would charge up these fireballs, essentially, and they'd go out into the world and try and hit other people with them. But eventually you got so many of them on the screen that someone was going to die. Like, it's just, there were too many balls bouncing around. for you to dodge. Whereas the Striker's Edge was, it was more about actually planned attacks than just randomly throwing things.
And the other thing, I guess I still have a few other things. One of them was the not Wonder Boy game, Monster Boy.
Oh, yeah.
Which, as someone who maybe missed the entire Wonder Boy series, seems like a cool platformer.
That whole sequence of events as to how we now have Monster Boy, which is inspired by Wonder Boy in Monster World, and Wonder Boy in Monster World in the same year is weird. From two different companies.
The history of this series and everything about it is weird. But there is a game inspired by Wonder Boy and Monster World coming out called Monster Boy. Cool platformer where you're a kid with a sword who is a thing that can turn into other things. So, yeah, okay. The other one is a remake of Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap, done in an amazing hand-drawn art style, which also looks like it's going to be coming out this year. That was not at the show, however.
I don't know if it was just that there was more things that I was interested in this year, or if it's the fact that I wasn't trying to,
more on the floor this year.
Yeah, maybe. I never made it upstairs at all. Like I kind of wish I had realized that I should go up and see what all was in the Diversity Lounge upstairs, because apparently there were some cool things up there too.
I didn't make it up there, so kind of hard to say.
But like I literally spent almost all the time sitting on the floor, and I probably spent more time in the tabletop area than I did in the digital area.
That might actually be true, because we were over there for a while playing Dice Throw, and we played Boss Monster as well.
Boss Monsters was really fun, but like I know you said that there's already like a slightly different balanced version out there, and it probably needs it.
And I have no idea. Yeah, I have not played Boss Monster 2. I don't know if it's any better balanced.
So I have to say, I'm looking at this Monster Boy thing. This is reminding me a lot of the most recent Shantae game.
It's a very similar art style too, where it looks almost vectorish.
Well, and it's also about a shape-shifting hero.
Shantae is well after Wonder Boy, so it is definitely inspired by, in that case.
Is Wonder Boy also like a shape, like Metroidvania, gather the transformations that allow you to better navigate the maps?
Traditionally, no.
Because that's what Shantae is doing, and that's what it looks like Monster Boy is doing.
The other one they're remaking this year, Dragon's Curse, Dragon's Trap, was. I know Monster Boy definitely is. Even among the Shantae games, they're mostly like that, but not all of them. So it's weird. That said, I will play mostly anything where the main character is a shapeshifter, so whatever. Probably pick it up.
So I guess another thing that has happened since we last recorded a show is that a bunch of us have returned to playing Final Fantasy XIV on a regular basis, namely myself and Grace.
I've been having a lot of fun with this.
It has been
I am back to engaging in bad ideas. Working on the Relic Quest yet again.
So having folks back around really reminds me of the one thing I want to see in Stormblood above everything else. I want a smoother gear transition.
God, yes.
Yes, please.
I was about to ask, is there a way to get caught up to current stuff without having to run 24-man raids? Because right now that's the reason that I haven't gotten back into Final Fantasy XIV.
You can grind a lot for book craft.
It's one of those things where in the first Rev, what they had were multiple paths to get gear. You could do coil, you could do lots of expert roulette grinding, you could do 24-mans, you could do a variety of things. You could do hunts, you could do, later you could do hunts, you could do, a bunch of different things. And all of them gave you roughly equivalent gear at each tier. So you could kind of work your way up using a variety of different things. And if you ever wanted a full set, sure, you had to dedicate yourself. But, you could get stuff in a variety of ways. And now, it's no, if you want to progress your gear in a relatively reasonable, relatively painless way, you have to do
or spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because, I know you had quite a lot of money before leaving the game, so in theory, you could just buy your way to freedom, because they put out a 250 crafted set.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a bajillion djil, you can drop, you could drop you could drop a fat handful of Jill and be better geared than any of us overnight, if you so desired.
How many Jill would this take?
About 1 million per piece.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the item.
Depends on the piece.
Yeah.
Some are more, some are less. Like, some are down as low as, like, 600, 700,000. Some are more than 1 million. But, like, you also wouldn't need to kit out every single piece. You could fairly feasibly, like...
Go after your lowest item.
Go after your lowest items, buy your cheapest stuff.
Right.
And then, fill in the rest with some book rocks and, run some Palace of the Dead to get a weapon on a max level character so that you have enough book rocks to buy the last couple of pieces you might need.
Yeah, Palace of the Dead really is a reasonable way to get book rocks.
Yeah, I mean, it's not fast, but you're also working your way towards a weapon, which is otherwise pretty hard to get.
I feel like I got caught up pretty fast, but that was 2 pieces of gear that were purchased, in addition to some book rocks.
Yeah. And if you're willing to do all of the things, you can go relatively quickly. But if there's something that you're just like, I don't want to do that, like, okay, well, you're going to be really slowed down. Or in the case of like earlier Wings of Alex, if there's stuff that like nobody's running anymore, then that whole like wing of getting gear is locked off to you, unless you can get a whole bunch of people to run stuff with you.
And not a lot of people are running early Wings of Alex.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like to some extent, part of the problem with Heavensward is that they listened mostly to the most hardcore base.
I think that they developed Coil and were ultimately disappointed that fewer people played Coil than they wanted. And I can understand that. And I can understand developing...
That's definitely why Normal Alex exists.
Yeah.
Because they've said that.
Yeah, and I think Normal Alex is perfectly reasonable. I just think it's not well incentivized. Like, what there probably ought to be, and I think would probably help things a lot, is Alex Roulette. Where you do... And you do Alex Roulette. You can collect from it 3 times per day, and it keeps people running that content. Because that's actually a pretty reasonable way to level up, but there's a lot of interdependencies this time around that I feel like weren't so extreme. Because like if you want to upgrade your Alex gear, you got if you want to upgrade Alex gear, you've got to run the 24 mans, right?
Can't upgrade Alex gear.
Well,
right,
the weapons that you get from a token from running Alex, you can upgrade, but this is why everything is sort of weirdly interconnected.
Yeah, and it's like in relative fairness, like the eye level that you can currently reach in the game is much higher than the actual eye level required to do everything that exists in the game. But there's a real like awkward, painful climb up that ladder, whereas in the previous setup it wasn't that hard.
Well,
like, the jump is long.
I can tell you exactly what the problem is. In previous or in Realm Reborn, a set of dungeons got you the gear needed to get to the next set of dungeons.
Yes.
And that's not there anymore.
Yes.
It gets you 5 from the next set of dungeons, but
yes,
so like
you've got to find some other way of getting, and that's the thing. I totally agree. Like if you had a complete dungeon, you could do the next dungeon. And I think that's missing in the current iteration.
Yeah, there's no catch-up mechanism. Like they don't go in and backfill more catch-up mechanisms to get you up to the current content quickly.
Yeah, and I feel like they did a very good job of that in the first round, and I'm hoping they balance that out in Stormblood, because it's really awkward and painful in Heavensward. That being said, I'm fairly confident that they will have figured that out. They certainly learned from the nightmare that was crafting, and my understanding is that crafting is much less painful than it once was. Like in that there is a progression as opposed to a giant middle finger.
Not sure I agree with that point then.
Like, crafting is still an incredibly hardcore. Let's not beat around the bush on that one. But it is no longer level every single crafting class, or how about you don't even bother.
No, you're wrong. It's still that.
Is it still that? They went back to that?
They never fixed that you need all 50 abilities. Or most of them anyway.
Then I take back everything good I said about their changes to crafting.
Exactly, yeah.
I thought that they had
They put in a replacement for Byregot's Blessing.
Yeah,
so you don't have to get craft. don't have to get Carpenter all the way out.
I was under the impression
Carpenter one is better, but they didn't replace all the others. Like manipulation, there's no replacement for it.
I was under the impression that they had done a thing where you don't need to level all of them in order to be a competent crafter, but I see it.
You can be a competent crafter by becoming a specialist and getting specialist action, which are pretty good, but not as good as those.
Then it's worthless. No, never mind. I thought those were as good.
They're not as good.
Then no, then they have not fixed.
Crafting is still madness.
Crafting is still. You should get most of these 50.
That's unfortunate. So yeah, anyway.
Granted, they made it a lot easier to do that, but yeah.
But you still have to do it, even if you're not even a little bit interested in doing it.
Well, if you're not interested in, then you're not interested in crafting.
Yep, exactly. You can't dabble.
Right. Unless you want to do things like make glamour prisms or repair, or the reasons I have armor are up.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to craft any actual gear.
I would love to level it. I think I got it to around 30-ish on all crafts, but it is a massive time sink and a massive money sink.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be that anymore, because you can...
Yeah, the quests make it not a giant money sink.
Right, but it's still a large time sink.
That being said, I like all of the new content. Like their storytelling is dead on. Their story content, their like dungeon and raid content I've played. I
didn't do the airship thing, right?
Which airship thing?
The diadem or whatever it was.
I never did any diadem.
It's currently ripped out of the game while they put in a replacement for it that is hopefully better.
Hey, I give credit for ripping something out that they need to make better. Like Final Fantasy XIV, the first time around. But no,
I'm just glad they realized it's the thing they can do.
I think the last 2 sets of dungeons have been pretty fun and have had interesting story stuff. All of the Alex stuff is incredibly fun to do as a group.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing the last wing of Alex, since I still have not seen that yet.
Yeah.
I am ready for my schedule to stop being horrible like it was this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping we can get a full group so that we've got a couple of people who are like still catching up, and we've been trying to get them caught up, but you sit in queue for 20 minutes because nobody's doing those earlier wings of Alex, and they can't do the new stuff even if they've got the gear.
How far is Elian off now, item level wise?
I'm not actually sure.
So last week we discovered that the Party Finder, which they just made cross-server, is a real thing and quite useful.
Yes.
It's basically the equivalent of WoW's old LFG interface, except people actually use it.
That's cool.
We've also found out that we have a tank. It's a problem.
Yes, we have a tank shortage, and we somehow have more healers. I don't know how that happened.
The thing is that we have... I don't know... I don't exactly know why. It seems... Maybe it's because I'm less into this right now, but it's... I know that I have not been felt like it was reasonable for me to put the 10 levels into my paladin to get it up. Maybe because those 10 levels take so long to do.
I feel like it really depends on, do you enjoy Palace of the Dead or not? Because Palace of the Dead is so, especially with the new tier of Palace of the Dead, which, by the way, another piece of content that I like quite a bit. You can run the new Palace of the Dead. It takes 3 runs to level your 50s. Like 30 floors will level you pretty reliably. And so you're doing, what, like 30 floors? 30 sets of 10 floors? And that should get you from 50 to 60?
Yeah, from 50 to 60?
Yeah.
Oh, 30, yes. Yeah, okay.
And, like, that's, 30 sets of 10 floors. Each set is between 15 and 30 minutes.
So, the problem that I have is the last several times I sat down and solo entered, the group failed out, and then you lose your progress.
That's the thing. Is I feel like you should. I feel like all or nothing is not awesome for random.
No, and that was like really disheartening. Like it happened 2 or 3 times in a row one night, and then I'm like, nope, I'm done. I am just done.
It's why I don't like running those higher healer or like no tank and no healer, like not a balanced group.
Man, I feel like if I'm tanking, I end up with 3 other tanks. If I'm healing, I end up with like at least 2 other healers. If I am DPS, we end up with no healer, no tank. So like I can't win for losing at all.
And I wouldn't mind if you lost like the weapon progress you made, but you should get like some bulk rocks and XP, so it's not just a total waste of time.
I feel like that's the part that's missing with Heaven's Word is I feel like they forgot some of the things they learned during A Realm Reborn as far as incentivizing people to want to do things.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes they've forgotten, sometimes they didn't. Like, to upgrade the Shire gear, for instance, you need to run all 3 of the 24-mans to keep people running through the first one and the second one, which they did not remember when Circus Tower came around, but remembered by the time World of Darkness hit. Before World of Darkness, it was kind of hard to get a Labyrinth group for a little while.
Right. But I also feel like by the time we reached the point we're at now in A Realm Reborn, they had kind of opened the loot taps up 100%, and there were a bunch of different ways that you could get geared for the new expansion.
They hadn't quite yet. It took until very close before the expansion came out for them to... What they did was, really the only thing they did, was raise the cap on Poetics from $450 a week to $900 a week.
They also made the previous tier cost about half as much.
They didn't. Not until... Actually, they never reduced the cost of that stuff.
They just make it ridiculously easy to get lots of them. I know that at one point it took less than half as long to get a piece of the not ultimate tier set.
The only set they ever reduced the cost of was the starting Heavensward set. It was dramatically cheaper than any of the others had been in terms of book rock costs. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they've been a standard price, which does not prevent me from forgetting how much a chess piece costs every single time.
But I guess in truth, we still have several months before the expansion.
And at least one more content patch?
1.5, a minor patch, and a half of a major patch.
Yeah. Like, we have at least one patch that is going to be the major story patch of hold on to your butts, it's time for the expansion. Which I sort of feel like we've already had several of those. The amount of story that's covered in between the end of the Heavensward story and now is shocking. Like, it's as much as the Heavensward story. I really like that sort of seasonal feel to it, where the expansion is a whole story getting you up to the new level cap, and then there's as much story at the level cap for new stuff that's happening.
I think while it's not the most exciting content, I am enjoying doing Beast Tribe dailies again.
Some of those I really actually. Not the Sagan so much, but the Kobolds are great, the Vath are great, Moogles are, believe it or not, great.
Really?
I like that quest series.
I haven't even
Yes,
started.
it is annoying chasing Moogles through the Churning Mists, but I like the actual, quest progression.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's basically about some Moogles deciding, okay, we need to stop playing pranks and buckle down and do some stuff.
Yeah.
And needing your help to figure out how exactly to do that, because it's not really in their nature.
We don't know how to be serious, yo.
It takes a bit for them to figure that out, yes. Also, someone made the mistake of showing me what the Paladin animal weapon actually looks like, and suddenly I find myself back doing this quest series again.
That is, I wonder if I'm going to care about relic weapons in the next expansion. Because I've been able to
On a scale of a weapon is a book to yes, how far? What do you think it's going to be?
I don't know. It's like, on a scale of 1 to I'm a red mage, how much do I care about how I look? I mean, the answer is probably a lot. Like, there's a reason I'm playing a red mage, for one.
I mean, red mages are kind of about looking fancy.
Yeah. Is that going to be enough to, like, break my usual distaste for the insane-o grind of the relic weapon? Plus all the catching up I'd have to do.
Any catching up. Basically started over when Heavensward hit.
Oh, well, okay. Fair enough.
Let you skip the first step, which is, by the way, one of the easier ones. If you turn in a completed relic weapon from A Realm Reborn.
Lol, no. Hey, that's nonsense.
At some point, I actually, need to pick up and do the step that, whatever step I'm on the legitimate modern relic quest. Because I didn't make it terribly far into that one either.
You started getting crystals? You were finished getting crystals?
I finished getting crystals. I'm on whatever the next step is, which is like do Snowcloak, and I've never
some dungeons.
I've never run Snowcloak since then.
When do we find out? When is the last FanFest? Is that next week?
Soon?
This coming weekend, yes.
Okay. So we should, like, by next podcast, we should know a bunch of stuff about the remainder of what's coming in the new expansion. Like,
They'll probably announce Samurai and probably something else about the class system, because they hinted there are changes coming, but haven't said anything specific.
No, yeah. I know they're real excited about not supporting PS3.
They are real excited about not supporting PS3 anymore.
I'd be real excited about not.
The crowd was also pretty excited about them not supporting PS3 anymore.
I'm excited that I don't have to support PS3, just generally, even though I left that job like 10 years ago.
So, I know a game Tam and Kodra have been playing this week is Nioh, or however the hell you pronounce that.
That is how you pronounce that.
Nioh.
Samurai Souls.
Yeah, so, oh, wow. God, I love this game. Nioh is Dark Souls.
Samurai Diablo Souls.
Yeah, it's Dark Souls as designed by the team, by Team Ninja and folks, with a Diablo loot system and a UI that feels like it was developed this decade. And instead of like the sort of classic, either the classic high fantasy or the like corrupt steampunk of the Souls and Bloodborne, this is set in like mythic Japan.
Fantasy.
Yeah, it is also definitely historical
in all the weirdest senses.
Yes, like very. You play as William Adams, who like is a historic figure who went to a guy from the British Isles who went to Japan and became a samurai. Like actual history, actual thing that happened. You play as this guy, which is about where the historical accuracy. Because in the game, what you're doing is breaking out of the Tower of London so that... I
don't think happened.
No, that's not a thing. But you're breaking out of the Tower of London and chasing down some other historic figure guy whose name I can't remember, because he's going to exploit all of the demons that exist in Japan and bring them back to England so that the Queen can conquer Spain. And you think this is a terrible idea, and you're also not wrong. Yeah, like demons are full of this particular kind of candy, and this guy wants to collect all this candy and bring it back so that England can take over the world and defeat Spain.
Okay.
Yep. But there's a bunch of things that I like about it. I've never gotten hugely into Souls games. And part of that is that I never really feel like there's a point to what I'm doing in Souls games, because they're really light on story, and they really don't like to deliver the story in a sensible kind of way. Like they deliver it in like one-liners from NPCs in the case of Bloodborne, or like flavor text on items sometimes. It's really, really haphazard and so on. And so I'm never really sure why I'm doing anything that I'm doing.
Dark Souls is a big fan of actually explaining things in item descriptions.
Yeah. And in Nioh, every level, it's broken up into levels, so it doesn't have the complete open world feel of Souls games, which is sort of a pity, but I can live with it. But it does have like a cast of characters who are actual people, and you get background on what's going on in the world, and this is like a real place where people live. It just is war-torn, and you're dealing with that. And so I feel like the story is delivered in a way that makes me more interested in what's going on, which means that when a boss kills me like 300 times, I'm a lot less likely to feel like the whole exercise is pointless.
Yeah.
Yes, that absolutely does happen. I've died a lot.
I have played a little bit of this with Tam, and it definitely feels like a more responsive, very fast game. The thing I noticed is it feels like enemies are pretty sturdy. Like in Bloodborne, you eventually get to the point where Bloodborne and Souls games, you eventually get to the point where you're pretty quickly making work of the enemies. Most enemies require more than a single combo to wear through their health in this game.
Yeah. I figured out what's going on with that. There's a particular cadence to the fight. It's actually one of the coolest melee. Now that I understand it more, it's one of the coolest melee combat systems I've played in a video. It really painstakingly recreates the feel of like a samurai movie or actual martial arts, because it makes a lot of your fights into this sort of careful circling and then a flurry of activity, and then your two combatants part and return to circling until one of them strikes a decisive winning blow, or the other one is just so worn down that they can't win. And so you've got your like health bar and your ki bar, which is basically stamina. And one of the best ways to beat most opponents is just to overwhelm their stamina bar. And so one of the things, so like even if they're blocking, hitting somebody who's blocking would chip away at their stamina bar. And if you can chip away at their stamina bar faster than your stamina bar is going down, and there's a kind of return to stance button you can hit that kind of gives you a boost to your stamina, because it goes down pretty quick. It's like rogue energy style, like WoW rogue energy. But you can get it back really fast if you've got good timing, kind of the way like Gears of War has the timed reload thing, where if you hit the button at just the right time, you reload instantly as opposed to playing through the whole animation. So if you get good at doing that, you can sort of chain one combo immediately into another one. So it's just one flowing combo with a like half-second pause in the middle. And then enemies just crumble.
Yeah, I think I would need to play more of that game myself, just to get more familiar with the feel of the combat. It also, I think, has fewer enemies all told, like in each area, than Souls games usually do. Interesting.
As I've played through the levels, like comparing it with Bloodborne, for example, I think the total number of enemies in the run-up to the big wood guy, whatever, cleric beast, that total number of enemies is about the number of enemies that are in the entire first level.
Yeah, I would say also that cleric beast is a little bit more that's a little bit more of a dense area than most of that game, I think.
Yeah, but there's also 3 checkpoints as opposed to 1.
In which one?
In Nioh.
Oh, there's several. Oh, well, I guess at that point there's not. You can get checkpoints before that one.
Oh, I mean like lantern, like places you come back to if you die.
Yeah, there's a couple of checkpoints in that level.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the run up to cleric, like just from 0 to cleric beast.
Oh wait, you might be right.
Like I'm pretty sure it's just the one lantern.
Yeah, it's just that you open up that lantern to have a bunch of paths.
Yeah. Nioh has both the additional paths and more lanterns, so I feel like I ultimately fight fewer enemies, especially between deaths, but each enemy takes longer. Because they absolutely do take longer, Bloodborne or Souls game. But part of it is I like playing a game where it feels more like, I don't know, I like the martial arts feel of melee combat.
Yeah.
Nioh a lot. It's less I'm trying to think of a good example. It's less like 40k or Warhammer Fantasy, like dude with a sword cleaving through swarms of orcs, and more like Seven Samurai with demons, if it were a fantasy movie.
So Seven Samurai meets Great Wall, the game or the movie that's just about to come out.
Maybe.
About the crazy demon hordes attacking the Great Wall.
Yeah. I will say that there's a lot of weird hidden stuff. The one that got me, I'd been running through this particular area for probably like 2 hours. And I kept passing this wall and it would make a weird sound. And I never really thought anything of it because there's lots of weird sounds in the game. And if I jumped at every single one of them, I would never get anywhere. And finally I stopped and I'm like, what is that sound? Is it the wall making that sound? And so I approached the wall and these 2 eyes glare at me, open up and glare at me from the wall. And I'm like, oh, that's probably not good. So I hit it with my sword and this thing that looks, I swear, like an angrier demon version of the Thwomps from Super Mario 64 just comes out of the wall and tries to fall over. And I realize that that is an actual mythological Japanese demon. But
yep.
And as Ash pointed out earlier today, Thwomps themselves are based on it. But
you can pretty much assume that there's an actual Japanese thing for basically any object, but animated.
Yeah.
Because if an object lasts 100 years, then it basically develops sentience in Japanese mythology. And so you end up with weird, animate umbrellas and things hopping around on one foot.
Huh. I have not run into any animate umbrellas. Well, I did run against...
Yet.
It's fair. I did run up against a Japanese vampire who shit out of the umbrella. So there's that. There's very little more. There's very few deaths I've had in a video game that are more ignominious than being beaten to death with an umbrella. I mean,
umbrella foo is a thing.
Yeah, They've happened, but I'm not about it. It was better when she bit my head off.
I'm guessing you've never seen the movie Iron Monkey.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
You should watch. If nothing else, you at least need to see the umbrella scene from Iron Monkey.
I've been wanting to sit down and watch Seven Samurai again because it's been a while.
The new one, or wait, that's bring it to the 7.
No.
Whatever, same movie.
Look, it's fair. No, like the original. I don't want to. I've been tempted to see if I can talk Kodra into watching it with me, but I would also fully understand if you were like, "How about no?" Because not everyone wants to watch a movie from 1954 with a running time of 207 minutes completely in black and white.
I mean, I might be willing to do that. My problem is mostly finding time right now.
That's also fair. It's also not what you might call fast-paced.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's pretty slow moving.
Like, I mean, maybe the fact that it's 207 minutes long is a hint that it's not the fastest-paced movie ever.
Yes.
But it's really good. It's the classic. It's the classic, like, awesome samurai movie.
So, Tam, you also mentioned Titanfall 2?
Oh, yeah. So, I was reading about Activision's response to Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. And it made me think. I started playing some of Titanfall 2 because I had a friend who worked on it and was like, you should try it. All right, sure. It's a really solid, futuristic mecha shooter. If you want to tromp around in a mech, in a sassy mecha, because they've got AI. They put AI in those things for some reason. And
have giant robots without, robots.
Yeah, it's like a giant robot that has a mind of its own and doesn't mind if you climb inside and pilot it around a bit. And when you're not in it, you're like this crazy parkour-y, like, ninja soldier. And so it feels really good when you're in the giant mecha blowing everything up, and it feels really good when you're not in the giant mecha jumping around like crazy. And it's just a solid shooter. I don't know if I would play the multiplayer, but if it had a co-op, I would get really super into it.
Yeah, it doesn't.
No.
But anyway, all that also applies to the original Titanfall. So what's new about this one?
It has a campaign mode.
I guess that's a plus.
Like, it has a story mode that I am playing, so therefore I'm playing the game. That's really, I'm pretty sure that's really the only difference, is that it has a campaign. And so I am interested because I can play the campaign. Whereas I don't think the original had any single player anything.
It did not.
Pretended to.
Yeah.
It had tutorial mode, basically.
Like, no, this has like a fully featured campaign that I've been sort of slowly working through. I mean, thus far it's not like a masterpiece of storytelling, but it's fun. If you've been sort of itching for a futuristic shooter, and you don't want to replay, like, Deus Ex for the 30th time, then give it a shot.
Huh, neat.
I've had fun with it.
So, like, is there a good story?
I mean, there's a story.
Sounds like there is a story.
Like, it is a military shooter story. Like, as far as I've gotten, you're like a new rookie pilot, or a new rookie wannabe pilot, and some battlefield operation goes awry, because that's what happens, and your mentor saves you but dies in the process, like happens, and you take over your mentor's mech, like, you'd expect. And so then you're working with your mentor's mech, who's sort of adjusting to the fact that you're this rank newbie and trying to help you out as much as possible, trying to salvage the situation that you're in. I haven't really gotten super far into it, so I don't know if it, like, does something fantastic and brilliant with its story. Although I've heard good things. I don't think it's, there's only so many places you can go with that kind of thing, but hey, who knows? Maybe we'll go with it. But it's got a relatively convincing, like, wars on colony worlds kind of sci-fi story going on. It establishes some at least compelling villains.
Cool.
Like, I certainly know who I'm shooting and why, and feel motivated to do so. Like, I'm gonna play more of it at some point, and we'll report back with, is the story any great shakes? But definitely the gameplay is fun.
That's cool. Pretty good level design for, like, the mobile parkour and the big robot mech parts.
Yeah, and it transitions between the two surprisingly well. There were some interesting places I played through where I'm kind of, like, carefully jumping rock to make progress, and then to, like, there's a section early on where you've got to, like, jump around this area and get into these hard to reach places and then return to your mecha to get batteries. And then once your mech is fully charged, you hop into that thing and move through the same space in a different way. And like just knock down trees and stuff that were impassable objects when you were on foot, but are now, just terrain that you can destroy.
Cool.
And so it does some interesting stuff like that, where you're either this huge hulking thing in a inside of a complex, or you're like dodging around the complex and sneaking around or not sneaking around, depending on your take on things. It does the Halo thing where there's a lot of weapons that you can switch to all the time, but you can only hold 2 of them. But unlike Halo, it lets you choose weapons that you particularly like and kind of stick with them because they have unified ammo types.
Oh, so it's not like you're going through the entire game using absolute trash for weapons.
No, but you can frequently, like, sometimes you'll find an obviously rare weapon, and so, like, then but, like, any weapon that's not an obvious, like, oh, this is a missile launcher, you can sort of keep using. At least I haven't felt like I've been forced to change out my weapons too often. And if I am, there's usually a feel replacement for the one that I was using before, where it's kind of fills the same role but isn't the same exact gun. So it's like I've gone through 2 or 3 sniper rifles, but I've had a sniper rifle. It hasn't been like, oh, well, you've been using a sniper rifle, but now you're only going to get shotguns. I was playing a decent amount of that, and then Nioh happened, and that's all I've been playing since.
Well, anybody else have any other things they want to discuss before we wrap things up?
Don't think so.
Cool. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we would, as always, love to hear any of your thoughts about any things we talked about tonight. We will be back next week for yet another show, and good night!
Good night!
Good night.
See you.